يا بنت موسى بن جعفر ورحمة الله وبركاته.
بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. From the 4th of Muharram in Karbala, when the supply of water was cut off for the family of the Holy Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, Sakina alayha salam, the 4 years old, beloved daughter of Imam Hussein alayhi salam, shared whatever little water she had with the other children. Soon there was no water at all, and the young children were looking at Sakina with their faces full of hope. And because she could not help them, she had tears in her eyes. Her lips were parched with thirst. The children bare the thirst for as long as they could, but finally they could not resist anymore, and cried of Al-Atash were heard in every tent by the little children. Al-Atash, Al-Atash, thirst, thirst. Hazrat Abbas alayhi salam, the valiant brother of Imam Hussein alayhi salam, and the moon of the Hashimites, asked permission from Imam Hussein alayhi salam every time. Sir, please allow me to go and fight with the enemies. But every time Imam Hussein alayhi salam refused and sent him back saying, Abbas, you are the captain of my army. You are my alamda, the standard bearer. Imam Hussein alayhi salam knew that Hazrat Abbas alayhi salam was so brave and strong that if allowed to go to the battlefield with a sword, he would conquer the enemies and would fight them all single-handed. Hazrat Abbas alayhi salam therefore would step behind every time, waiting for the command from his master and brother. Finally, he could not bear to hear the cries of the thirsty children, so he once more went to Imam Hussein alayhi salam, asking permission to go on to the battlefield. This time he said, "Oh Akka, if you don't want me to go to the battlefield and fight, at least allow me to go and fetch water for the thirsty children." I could not bear to hear the cries and pleas. Imam Hussein alayhi salam finally agreed and said, "Okay, you can go for water, but do not carry your sword alone." Hazrat Abbas alayhi salam calmed the children by saying, "I am going to fetch some water for you all." Sakina alayhi salam, who was always known to be there for other children and granted them what they wanted, told the children that her uncle Abbas alayhi salam would go and fetch water. All the children gathered their dry water bags and handed them to Sakina alayhi salam, who in turn led them all to Hazrat Abbas alayhi salam. The way this young 4-year-old child united and gathered the other children shows us how Imam Hussein alayhi salam had well trained his children. Hazrat Abbas alayhi salam put the dry musk on the alam and mounted towards Imam Hussein alayhi salam. Hazrat Abbas alayhi salam said, "I have come to say goodbye." Imam Hussein alayhi salam replied, "My dear brother, come and embrace me." Hazrat Abbas alayhi salam dismounted his horse and tears welled in Imam Hussein alayhi salam's eyes. As Hazrat Abbas alayhi salam prepared to mount his horse, Imam Hussein alayhi salam said, "My brother, I want a gift from you. I want your sword." Hazrat Abbas alayhi salam, without uttering any word, gave his sword to Imam Hussein alayhi salam and rode toward the battlefield, aimed only a spear and holding an arm. In each action verified that Imam Hussein alayhi salam was not out there to fight. He always stood for peace and truth. As Hazrat Abbas alayhi salam went to fetch the water, the children gathered around Sakina alayhi salam with their little cups, knowing that as soon as Hazrat Abbas alayhi salam will bring the water, she would first make sure that they had some before taking any herself. Sakina alayhi salam was standing next to Imam Hussein alayhi salam. Also, her eyes fixed on the standard of Hazrat Abbas alayhi salam. As enemies saw Hazrat Abbas alayhi salam approaching, they started fleeing in every direction. As his bravery was very well known, this allowed him to reach the river bank easily. As he bent down to fill the dry musk, the standard disappeared from sight. Sakina alayhi salam was frightened and looked at her father. Imam Hussein alayhi salam looked at her daughter and said, "Sakina, "Your uncle Abbas is at the riverbank." She smiled and said, "Alhamdulillah, all praise is for Allah." Then she called the other children to give them the good news. With water bag filled, Hazrat Abbas a.s. wanted to reach to the anxiously waiting children as quickly as possible. Seeing him gallop to the tent of Imam Hussein a.s., a Yazidi commander shouted from the enemy's rank, "If even a single drop of water reached the tent of Imam Hussein a.s., it will be impossible to fight them on the battlefield." When arrows were coming from all sides, Hazrat Abbas a.s. had only one thought, that was on how to protect the water bag. It was more important for him to reach the water bag to the children than the loss of his life. The enemies determined not to let him take the water bag to the tent, and hence one of them shot an arrow to the right hand, which held the water bag. Hazrat Abbas a.s. quickly shifted the water bag to the left hand. Another aimed to the left hand. Hazrat Abbas a.s. he once again determined to save the water bag, and he held it with his mouth, while he lost his left one. Losing both his arm, the standard fell on the ground. Bi Sakin a.s. could not see it any longer, and he looked at Imam Hussein a.s., but he turned his face away. Bi Sakin a.s. began to tremble with fear. Her eyes were filled with tears. She raised her hand and prayed, "Ya Allah, do not let them kill my uncle Abbas. I will not ask for water again," and ran inside to her mother. As finally the enemies determined not to let the water bag to reach to the tent of Imam Hussein a.s., one of them aimed an arrow straight to the water bag, teared it, and letting the water to splash all over. This final blow all the strength that was left, and Hazrat Abbas a.s. fell from his horse crying, "Ya Aba Abdullah, adrikni." Imam Hussein a.s. ran to help his brother. He ran to help his brother and finally brought the standard bear drenched with blood back to the tent. Bi Sakin a.s. knew that her uncle Abbas had left them and had been martyred. She promised her father she will not ask for water again. Wa hadha, assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi ta'ala barakatuh.